Good afternoon, everybody. After Sergei's presentation, I want to sit somewhere in the corner and to think about, oh my god, I have to work on myself before I deliver this speech. But I will talk about some strictly practical things which I experienced myself and which I can vouch for because I have more experience and in a booth, and the story of simultaneous interpreting for me started on my first higher education. It was in Taras Shevchenko National University. I would like to thank Olga Yurievna Vasilchenko and Povoroznuk. I would like to thank them. We had only 6 booths and with only 4 working booths, but still we managed to study something, and then the most part was absorbed during the interpreting in the field, and then I decided to look how is it studied on that side. This is a reminder for me to start. Okay. And I entered the University of International Affairs in Strasbourg, and then I decided to upgrade my second working language, French, and those exercises about which I will be talking today, I would not say that that's not that's some no how something new, because all those exercises are known from the university. These I would like to say thank to the one who provided us with those exercises. So let's. I think that I should start with the words that interpretation is surrounded by lots of myths. Few months ago, I saw the article of some famous psychologists, and I read the next. Bilingual people cannot be interpreters because they does not have the length between languages. The next one was about that up to 45 years the heart diseases become more ill and more sick and achieve the health problems. Actually, we can talk a lot about it, but still I promise that I will be talking about more related things. Also, what should we do in order to improve those skills? First, I would like to say that we do not need to install the interpreting booths at home. We will need just a computer with the earphones. The earphones should be of a good quality. I don't like earpads. I like my earphones to be big, and the microphone, which is mostly built in most devices. You already have them. I like very much Audacity program. It is quite easy for us to record, and it is very easy to use, and surely the internet connection. We have all this. We can start as long as we have all this, but we should understand that the experience is gained only with practice. First exercise is pseudo-consec translation. What do we mean? We take some news, and each seventh or fifth word, on seventh of fifth word, we interrupt the recording and start translation, interpreting. And also it is also called traduction à vue. It's a translation from the list, and I would like to show in practice what does that mean. So I choose the news, some non-political news. We can switch off the last line, and we have to interpret it. We see, yeah, the preparation for 2016 Rio Olympics are the worst. It's okay, not very funny. Let's see what will be in the next line. Okay, ever seen according to International Olympics. So the next line, let ourselves to guess what will be the third part. Committee Vice President John Coates. Okay. And about the
Australian said the IOC has taken unprecedented action by placing.
So starting the sentence with Australian will be quite tricky, but we can repeat that John Coates could consider some actions or offered his initiative. Placing we will not be interpreting because we do not know what will be the next phrase. So while offered his job to a local committee in order to provide the good preparation, we can relax on it and open the next line. We are lucky to see the whole sentence. The situation is critical on the ground, he said. So, okay.
As Brazil faces a race to be ready in time for the FIFA.
The news comes as Brazil faces a race to be ready in time for the FIFA. We know Brazil will hold the World Cup FIFA, which will be started in 44 days. So this is something we can call pseudo interpreting, pseudo consecutive interpreting, because sometimes we does not have the time to talk to the speaker, but still we can also pay attention on that exercise. The next exercise is attention splitting. These are for those most sadistic interpreters, because we should count on foreign language and from 1 to 100, then count on a native language from 100 to 1, then to count on foreign language from 1 to 100, and all this we should count while listening to the speaker, and then check how many details you memorized. So let's read. Mr. Speaker, дорогие американцы, сегодня в Америке студенты проводят много времени переводчик делает свою часть работы, и за последние несколько лет бизнес развился. Компания.
A farmer prepared for the spring after the strongest 5-year stretch of farm exports in our history. Here are the results of your efforts: the lowest unemployment rate in over 5 years, a rebound in housing market, a manufacturing sector that's adding jobs for the first time since the 1990s. That's why I believe this can be a breakthrough year for America. After 5 years of grit and determined effort, the United States is better positioned for the 21st century than any other nation on earth. Вот, ну, конечно, я всех пожалела.
Страна на земле. Of course, I just make it easier. That's not 6 minutes of read. But would you manage to remember all the numbers which I mentioned in the text? Further, there is an example which is well known, that is shadowing. That means just to repeat the speech after the reporter. You may start with 5-10 minutes and try to lead it till 30 minutes. That's very useful exercise if you need to translate into foreign language. Thus, you can remember a lot of foreign constructions and phrases. That helps to invite and enlarge the vocabulary. Of course, it's not very interesting to repeat during during half an hour. And as Sergei mentioned, there is no such a translator who would not like to add something on his own. And I would to say about the first trap which is made by the translators. That is the feeling of a presenter who thinks that there is important to make it louder. The main thing is to speak a little bit not so loud as a presenter. It is even good to whisper while translating. In any case, you have to speak a little bit more silent, because you would not manage to translate during the whole day. After those exercises, you can start doing simultaneous translation. You have to start with 3-5 minutes and then to lead it till half an hour. Of course, you know that the norm is 20 minutes, but it depends on life. I had to translate 1.5 hours once, and it was in England. That was almost at night, and it was an unforgettable experience, but it appeared that there was nobody who would help me. So you have to work on your consistency. So where you can take the text for your work. YouTube site SoundCloud.com is full of different podcasts and audio texts. You may find the podcast of The Economist and any other radio programs. They have different lengths, and you can choose something you want till according to your interests and wishes. TED.com is also a good resource of texts and videos, but the texts over there are different, and presenters, of course, are of various types. Another one problem for interpreters is when you think that it is easier to translate into foreign language than into the native one, because you think that the words appear in your head quicker, and it's just easier for you. It appears that translation is a little bit poor, and you have to work on two-sided translation. Of course, I know the standard is to translate into the native language, but in terms of the new conditions of highly growing competition, there is a need to expand your possibilities and skills. That's why I'm for the developing of translation and interpretation into two languages, and the need of making records of your own translations. It is needed because if you can imagine that, you would be listened to almost the whole day, nearly 8 hours during the day, and sometimes there are other things that can be standard during 5 to 10 minutes. but not the whole day. There is a lot of extra sounds which can be okay during 10 minutes, but not something like not very good words. Different tempo of the speech, because you have to be in time with the presenter. But it appears that at the end of his speech, you tries to speak quicker to manage to provide the whole information. And the last one is a little bit ambiguous, but I still say that if you are speaking too monotonous during the 8 hours, it's just very hard to stand it. I'm also sometimes listening to the simultaneous translations, and it's really very hard. I guess that we are not supposed to make a copy of the presenter's articulation, but still we have to make pauses to make it possible to understand and to comprehend the whole presenter. That's all. If you have any questions, just feel yourself free to ask. And those are my contacts on the slide. Microphone. I have 2 questions, and I would like to show my knowledge also of Russian, as the report was in Russian. Your exercises give the material of pseudo-oral language. The interpreters have made such a problem that the people are speaking from them on their own, like I am. And that's meant the problem with the constructions and so on and so forth. The constructions, like a report or presentation, they are written and thought about, and when you speak on the spot, that is not so. And the second one, I don't agree with the fact that that is a trap. Any simultaneous translation starts from the point that you have to understand. The better you understand, the better you translate. Better you understand your native language. Your knowledge of foreign languages, even if being worse, that's not a problem. You would be understood. Even Barack Obama, even if your language is not full of different phrases, proverbs, and so on and so forth, that doesn't mean that you won't be understood. Of course, presentations are in different way uttered. Of course, you cannot show beautiful constructions which were learned from the early beginning, from studying a native language, but they would be pretty understandable. Speaking about the first question, I do agree that that is a pseudo-oral speech in reality, and synchron. You can study the simultaneous translation only being in a simultaneous translation, but if you take the pseudo-oral, pseudo-consecutive, so then you can translate even a movie, making pauses after each reply. And concerning the translation into foreign languages, that's a sphere where there are a lot of discussions. But still, I have an opinion that we are taught to translate into foreign, while the Western system is trying to prepare interpreters who are translated into their native language. But still, I think that if you have time, why not to translate into the foreign language, if you can do that in a good way. And even if you translate from the foreign and not understanding something while listening, but still you can compensate that in your native language better than trying to find the words in the foreign one. Thank you very much, Anna, for your presentation. And I have a question in a practical sphere. What can you recommend to improve the translation of numbers, because this type of information is very important. It cannot be damaged when trying to translate that. I'm also connected with a teaching process of translation. What can you suggest? According to my experience, I would suggest to have a piece of paper and a cup and pen and to take notes. And it's also frequently used the work of two people, and while the one is translating, the second one is taking notes. Would you give the microphone into the first row? The question is over there for the long time. Hello, I do understand that there are a lot of questions. I do understand that there are a lot of questions, and I would say here not to stand with the back to the others. I'm really very sorry not to be from the early beginning, because there was an interesting presentation in the business section. But when I entered, I was very interested in the words you were pronouncing, and it's very great that we are discussing those questions. There was a lot of very well said things based on practical experience, but there are things which surprised me, and I would like to draw attention to them. So my question is connected with those things. I would take my glasses. Several things were mentioned by the colleagues, and I have several remarks concerning the exercises. As you understand, to teach people to make simultaneous translation, you have to use exercises which can be effective, efficient, and known. And when I see that exercises are efficient, so I try to use them. Here are my criteria. I'm not connected with the question for a long time, and in this genre I was really frightened this pseudo oral translation, because when I teach people, I ban them to do that. I ban them to use printed materials when they are making an oral translation. But for the first time, when they are just starting to use a printed version, is banned, because their whole attention is devoted to those printed versions. And the thing that you recommend would postpone the process of education for a long period. I had students who tried to use this system in method of teaching, but when I was doing that, I used different languages, and in terms of German, Chinese, and others, they use only the oral things without printed things, and the result was very good. The second thing which made me afraid is to listen and to count. Of course, I know that this is used by all the methodologies, and I checked it just in 90s. And you said very correctly that it is devoted to the procedure of dividing the attention. But why do we need it? We are trying to translate somebody who gives out the information in foreign language, and what are we doing? Are we dividing it into any other information? No, we are just decoding it in other language, and we need to draw the whole attention to that process. That's why to work with two languages simultaneously is not very good for those simultaneous translators. And I even would say that there is a damage over here, because it would study them to pronounce the things which are not connected with the words they are listening to. Why can you need that being in a simultaneous translation? I guess nothing for. And the last thing, I just had a lot of small questions. For example, you said that exercises are to be done during 3-8 minutes. Why? And you also give commands. The third exercise. It was not only cause suspicions, but I guess just it's connected with speaking more silent. Yeah, if you're working, though, in that case, it's better to try to learn to do that. But when are you at the beginning stages, to speak a little bit silently? It's a strange thing because you know well when you speak loudly, you speak more. Speak quicker. So if you want to make the person to speak very quick, the person has to speak very loudly. We do not mention here articulation because it's very hard to imagine a person who have problems with articulation and starts to whisper just speaking silently. The European system is very flexible, and CEO of directional board of oral translation said that one-sided translation is not current nowadays because the reality is is in that way that there are a lot of small languages like Estonian who entered the European Union, and thus we have to work in two sides. Of course, this idea still exists. For example, French school as it still supports the idea, but that's not so. So I would try to recollect all your comments. I started with the fact that you are doing that pseudo-oral translation from the audios or videos, making pauses concerning. That's also an alternative variant. The second question was concerning numbering and listening to. I also mentioned that it worked in my own situation. For example, it helped me to deal with the very precise information. Of course, I'm not able to reproduce the whole precise information, but I would be able to reproduce the fact of 4 cars being bought. When you are in a booth, there are a lot of different factors which can draw your attention to different things, but you have to translate even if you are disturbed, because the main thing is not to be silent over there. And the further things will just commence. I would also like to add that I heard once a phrase, what is the difference between simultaneous and consecutive translation? Consecutive translation is a little bit like how to study to play the piano, and simultaneous is something like to learn how to ride a bicycle, and that's really so, I think. But today we're speaking only about simultaneous translation. I'm listening. Another one question. I had the questions from the early beginning. I'm Svetlana Bregman. I am a simultaneous translator, and I'm also try to teach to do simultaneous translation my future colleagues. And I work in the Ivanchenko Lviv National University. When I was listening to your presentation, it was very interesting. Thank you very much for understanding and speaking about those problems, even maybe you even didn't pay attention to them in that way, but they are really very important in terms of preparing translators in this sphere, especially for those teachers who are working on preparation of very whole total system of methods which can be used in the process of teaching. After the previous person orator, all my comments and questions just are not necessary to be asked. I found out the answers, and I would also draw attention to the fact some things which appeared. That's not remarks, but just several things for you to know. All those exercises also can be very useful, but they can make damage. That is something like a monkey with the mine or a gun. If we use those system not in the measures in the borders of our system, but you have to remember that there are a lot of different schools of translations, and I don't know whether we can distinguish any Ukrainian translation school, but I hope that the situation will change in a quick way, and any discussions concerning the profit or damage of that or other exercise, they are to be discussed in a more precise context. But when we speak about one-side translation, or do we need to teach translation in one side, or to work with language A or B or any other classification, or maybe we can use any other classification, but the fact that the COE and managers have officially accepted that we are not supposed to follow the idea of one-sided translation is very influential. I had the chance to speak to the teachers from the Azid school in French. They also think that the tendency is to be changed, as our region is also a good example. Those languages which are not so widespread are to be worked in two ways. I have a lot of other remarks to be voiced, but I would finish with the saying that we have to discuss that, and the experience which we can not only from practice or any other skills of translation, we have to integrate it and to find out the conclusions from over there and to use it in practice in Ukraine, or in the Ukraine, as was mentioned before. And we have to think about the fact that we have to try to find out the answers to the questions which are put by the moderators today in this section. Initially, I would say that I have supported language B in terms of certification. If speaking about the time, that's up to you. You may speak 3, 5, 7, it's up to you. The exercises are not mine. I just took the methodology which was used in Strasbourg school, where I was studied. I use only those which were efficient and good for me. I had the introduction when I just mentioned that. I would be short. I would like to draw attention to the things which are not to be forgotten. The main thing for the science is that the problem is to be very precisely set. The colleague from St. Petersburg inspired me to say this. What was mentioned at the beginning was the translation from the oral speech. In the offered conditions, which were mentioned in my presentation, it appeared that simultaneous translator is working not with the oral speech, but with the read text, which is read really very quickly, and we need to prepare the translators to that fact. Maybe the Strasbourg school would provide us with those methodologies. I'm not such well educated, but still our students are to be prepared to deal with the quickly read text. We are to develop dissociative skill. The other thing which was also mentioned by the colleague from St. Petersburg, we have to distinguish the translations which is a comprehension of text by ears or by eyes. And I have a friend who translates better from the sheet of paper, but not from the text he just heard. It's just too late to study. I do not have earphones. I don't have a computer. It's a big problem, and but we have to deal with it. It's again Alexeyeva. The questions which are not institutionalized for a long time. To translate from the sheet of paper something other thing. I participated in a very seriously in what is that? Okay. So I participated into the preparation of German certified translators in medicine. So their main task is to translate from the piece of paper on a certain period of time. But that is another type of task. Those are written questions in a form of a document. One was what you said, that as a translation with the help of a piece of paper. They are the first one who started to teach to make translation with the help of the paper. We haven't introduced that idea in our school. Only several classes at during the last months of studying. It's really even harder than to teach to do simultaneous translation. Simultaneous translation is the first task, and then you can prepare to do any kinds of written translation, and only then you may translate with the help of the paper. And you have also to teach to perceive written texts. I don't know what I was speaking about that because I'm also a simultaneous translator, and I was just shocked when a person whom I know is lawyer started to read a new law very, very quickly, and you have to translate him simultaneously. But the good thing was that on our native language, that is the thing which is conscientious, and that's very important task. And that is not the first task. The first task is to prepare a good simultaneous translator on the basis from the very beginning. I don't know, maybe in Ukraine the question is well decided. I really don't know. I just don't know in this way because I have a colleagues and artistic translators. Mark Belarusis is my friend, but I don't know what is in the way of preparation and teaching simultaneous translate. I visited Taras Shevchenko University and had an opportunity to watch how the diplomacy workers are prepared, but I guess the question is to be set at the end of the system. As the colleague from Lviv mentioned, those exercises they are good, but you have to know where to use them. And generally, the whole system of preparing translators, those exercises just have a very small took a very small place. That's the idea, the model. How can you self-improve your skills and to work in your own way? But I guess you would agree that it would be a little bit offensive if that would be the way how to prepare yourself to be ready to deal with the translation. Yeah, thank you. Would you like to ask? Sorry? And dear colleagues, sorry for pronouncing the same thing which were mentioned at the beginning of the conference. Here are the practitioners in terms of simultaneous translations. I am also the one. The colleague mentioned you asked how to teach to do simultaneous translation. I would like to draw your attention to the document which was mentioned at the beginning, that compendium, the set of rules of professional ethics, of how to behave and how to prepare to do that kind of translation, how to behave in the booth and what to do after. That's how to provide the customers with a very high quality product and to meet all their needs. I would like to ask to include this document into the list of those which will be published on the site. This document is published on the website of National League of Translators, and I have also I have opened the page, and the first line is you have to drink non-sparkling water. Thank you very much, Anna. I guess you can be great with the. You can be proud of with the discussion which was caused by your presentation.